Good morning, y'all. Josh of Severe Weather. We've got ourselves a potentially historic storm on tap for the next couple of days. A lot of dangerous weather and a lot of wintry weather combining in one place, going to make things very difficult for travel and dangerous for many of us here later today into tonight. I'm going to share my screen with you and go into what's going to be a memorable storm for most of us here. We do have a moderate risk of severe weather in effect over parts of the Texarkana, Arklatex, southeast Oklahoma later today into tonight. And that area is being highlighted for potentially some stronger tornadoes, very large hail, and widespread wind damage. As we get into tomorrow, there'll be a second area I'm a little bit more concerned with that hasn't been shown yet with a Storm Prediction Center, but that's parts of central and eastern Georgia into upstate South Carolina, maybe sneaking close to Charlotte. For potentially a few more tornadoes tomorrow afternoon and early evening. There's a cold side of the storm, and we are seeing adjustments in the models, but right now looking like perhaps just north of St. Louis over to near or just south and east of Chicago, we could have a very heavy snow event with strong winds and potentially power outages taking place tomorrow into tomorrow night. And over the interior of the Northeast, potentially a huge snowfall here late tomorrow night into the first part of the weekend. In between the two, things are going to be very shifty and very tricky to try and pin it down. Philadelphia and New York, we're probably looking at primarily rain. The interior of the Northeast and southern New England, some sleet, maybe starting as snow briefly, and then maybe even ending as some rain and possibly going back to snow. So a very challenging forecast in the next couple of days, and models still do not agree very well on what exactly is going to happen, but they are giving us some clues as to what looks like will happen. Nonetheless, we are looking at a huge area of rain, a huge area of severe weather, and a huge area of powerful wind over the next 48 hours. That's going to cause a lot of people to have some issues with the weather. So make sure you have multiple ways of receiving watches and warnings later today, tonight, and tomorrow on your phones. A lot of this weather is going to be hitting during the nighttime hours when things are potentially more deadly as people are sleeping and storms hit hard. I know for me, in Raleigh, I was woken up by 4 in the morning by an intense thunderstorm. Nothing severe, but it was loud. And that's really nothing compared to what I'm expecting here tonight across the deep south and tomorrow evening over parts of the southeast as well. Here is our map showing watches and warnings for the first day in about 10. We don't have a blizzard warning in the west or California, but we do have winter weather advisories in northern Cal and also watches and warnings over the Cascades and the interior parts of the Northwest. Snow falling around Tucson, Arizona overnight. Some accumulation there in parts that don't really see accumulating snow. Mainly the rim country and into the mountains of the Southwest. We're still dealing with heavy snow right on into this evening. We have a high fire danger across parts of South Texas. It was 104 degrees yesterday south of Laredo. Today may even get up to about 105 or 106, which would be all-time records for the beginning of March. We have a huge area of flash flood watches from Oklahoma straight through the Ohio Valley up into Ohio. Winter storm watches now posted for greater Chicago through northern Indiana and the southern half of Michigan. Winter storm watch as well across upstate New York and Vermont, and winter weather advisories across the rest of northern New England. And high wind advisories from much of Texas up into Illinois, back into the Virginias. High wind warning over eastern Tennessee and Kentucky. We could have winds close to hurricane force outside of any rain here later tomorrow, and all the way down to the central and eastern Gulf states as well. So a very dangerous setup for us across much of the country. The Storm Prediction Center does have a moderate risk for severe weather, and that includes possibly intense tornadoes stretching from near the Dallas-Fort Worth area over into the Little Rock and Memphis areas and down to about Jackson, Mississippi, and as far south as Alexandria and just north of College Station. A large area could see a significant tornado. Over 13 million people are in that risk for a stronger EF2 or higher tornado. A lot of that's going to come tonight, and a lot of these intense tornadoes could occur overnight tonight when you get into the eastern half of this region. Just a very dangerous setup, one that I want you to be particularly ready for. Not a high risk at this point, but that's not out of the question. There are some factors that may limit that, mainly how the warm sector looks like it'll be here this evening, and if there's going to be any kind of inhibition for storms to form. But once things do get going, I think they will be moving very quickly across the deep south, causing widespread damage, whether it be wind or tornadoes. A huge area of wind damage expected from west of Dallas-Fort Worth all the way back to almost Austin, Texas, and then expanding up to Memphis. We do have 15 million people that potentially could have significant winds over 70 miles per hour at some point late this afternoon into especially tonight and even overnight into the Mississippi Delta region. And oh, by the way, any point today, there'll be a couple of waves coming up from near San Antonio up to Abilene and into southern Oklahoma, where there could be some high amounts of hail as well. Before we even look at the threat for tornadoes, we see potential supercells and hail that could be 2 or 3 inches in diameter across much of central and north Texas, southern Oklahoma, into southwest Arkansas, and then into northwestern Louisiana as well. That's the intense hail. There's still a chance for hail outside of that. So a very large area is impacted today with potential severe weather. Tomorrow, the shift eastward includes over 50 million people, at least at a marginal risk of severe weather. And inside that region, we have a huge area of a slight risk. I thought for a minute this was the pollen map, but no, this is the severe weather map over the Carolinas, northern central Georgia and Alabama, much of Tennessee and Kentucky, possibly sneaking up to the Ohio River later on in the day. And I would not be shocked to see this slight risk come up a little farther to the north and east into West Virginia and southern Ohio, maybe getting to Peebles and Chillicothe towards the afternoon. There is some locally damaging wind that's possible. The tornado threat is not low across this entire region. There is some chance for a tornado or two, even in Kentucky and up to maybe near Cincinnati. But I think a better chance will be in the afternoon, early evening down in here, maybe Murphy and Gilmer County, Georgia, on to the south and east, Greensboro, Athens, Georgia, Anderson, maybe over into McCormick County, possibly even into Columbia, could see the risk for a tornado or two. Does it look like what tonight's weather looks like? I don't think so, but there are fast winds aloft and there is some wind shear. So I would not be surprised to see a little bit of a mini tornado outbreak in here later tomorrow, but nothing like what we're going to be dealing with late today and tonight over parts of the deep south. Still be prepared just in case this gets upgraded to an enhanced risk. And that is certainly still on the table here, depending on how things will play out here tomorrow. The Storm Prediction Center, this is the ensembles. We look at every model, what the ensemble means show, and the potential for intense tornadoes. And you can see the tornado parameters start climbing. We have a 50% chance of stronger tornado parameter later on today. This is at 6 o'clock Central, even all the way down to Austin. But I think more likely we're looking at issues farther along and to the east of Waco and east of 35 all the way over into 45 here in Texas, getting into the Dallas-Fort Worth area, especially southeast of the Metroplex. And we see a large area that could have quite a few ingredients in place for stronger tornadoes. I think the southern part of this region, while it will have a high tornado potential, I think it's going to be capped. So we may not see as much severe weather as areas north towards I-20, but nonetheless, be prepared just in case that cap breaks and we do see storm development occurring faster than now shown. And then as we get to tonight, things definitely look very dangerous around and east of Shreveport, over to Ruston and Grambling, up into southern parts of Arkansas, getting close to Pine Bluff. This is around midnight. And then overnight, expanding to the Ark-La-Miss region, the Mississippi Delta, maybe even getting to Memphis. Sorry for this weird coloring. And then the threat starts diminishing around daybreak near and south of Memphis and Batesville, Mississippi, around daybreak tomorrow. But we see still a possibility of a few stronger tornadoes, northeastern Alabama, western Georgia here around lunchtime tomorrow, and possibly tornadoes all the way up into southern parts of Indiana. The parameters are not high, but they are there. But it looks like maybe a greater area gets hatched here around and east of Atlanta, Athens, Georgia, Livonia, getting to Anderson, maybe up to Clemson and Pickens County, Oconee counties here in South Carolina, maybe up to Murphy and all the way to Chattanooga. And then it looks like our best chance for a potential tornado, which could be intense, is going to be somewhere in the sunset hours here of Friday. So we're looking at Anderson County, South Carolina. We're looking farther west, right across Lake Hartwell to about Athens, Georgia, and maybe sneaking on to the foothills region of North Carolina, getting up to Clover and Grover and Gastonia and Kings Mountain in that area. Would not be shocked if we saw a tornado or two somewhere in that region. Then things should diminish as we get to later in the evening. There'll still be a squall line moving through here, but we lose some of the wind shear that is in place for stronger tornadoes. So that's some good news, but just be vigilant just in case if you're in Raleigh and Fayetteville. Current temperatures right now are quite warm. You can see we've got a boundary that's draped right across North Carolina and Southeast Virginia. Milder air is stretching all the way up the Ohio River to Pittsburgh, where it's 50 degrees, and we're well into the 70s. So we've got a lot of moisture in place, a lot of warmth in place for severe weather, but we need more than that. From Pivotal Weather, you can see the simulated satellite shows a large area of rain and thunderstorms moving eastward over the mid-Atlantic states. A lot of cloud cover this morning over the deep south. A lot of this is coming out of the jet from the southwest, but we are going to see intense storms getting going here across central and north Texas and southeast Oklahoma later this afternoon, 3, 4 o'clock, and a huge complex expected here over eastern Oklahoma, central Arkansas, and especially down into the warm sector here across Texas, where we do have a clear sky out ahead of it. So this area is primed for severe weather. And as we go on into this evening, this is 8, 9, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock. You guys can see enormous storm clouds in here over southwest Arkansas, northwest Louisiana. These show intense supercell storms embedded within a squall line, and they could have locally strong tornadoes embedded within them. We're not going to see the kind of storms you see out in like Norman, Oklahoma in May, but a strong squall line with Boeing enhancement could produce, with the amount of wind shear we're looking at, we could produce locally strong to severe tornadoes. EF4, or not EF4, but EF2, EF3, maybe EF4, but probably more like EF2 into EF3. So as we go into the overnight hours, you can see this line does weaken a little bit. There's some warming aloft in Mississippi, but we still have an area to watch around Memphis around 4 or 5 in the morning. And then we continue to see heavy rain and thunderstorms over the Ohio Valley as our low pressure center here deepens and strengthens. And that produces just a huge amount of moisture and probably on the cold side, some heavier snow bands tomorrow morning over parts of the mid-Mississippi Valley, sneaking into the Great Lakes in the afternoon and evening. You can see there are some potential supercells, or at least a squall line, a broken squall line going here across Ohio and eastern Kentucky. And especially we see some cells getting going here in central Georgia. And this is right around 3 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. Here's 4 o'clock and 5 o'clock. And you can see right around dinner time, maybe a dangerous setup here across the Carolinas, the Western Carolinas and Eastern Georgia. But it's not going to look quite as much as intense as today as far as filling in a line of storms. We see more broken convection, but any cell that gets going here, whether or not it's an organized complex, could produce a tornado due to the fact that there'll be a high amount of wind shear here in the foothills region at the end of the afternoon tomorrow. We still see intense rain and storms moving eastward into central Virginia around Appomattox, getting over to Farmville and down to about the Triad of North Carolina, right around 7 o'clock tomorrow. Here's 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, and the Raleigh area on north and east could still see intense wind with this line of storms, but the majority of our storm at this point is going to be snow in the northeast and heavy rain on the mid-Atlantic coastline all the way up to New York City and southern New England, and maybe some thunderstorms all the way up to South Jersey here tomorrow night. So we could be in for a bit of an awakening here as we get to tomorrow night. Here's our cyclone on the NAM model, and I'll scoot you back here. We can see low pressure over Texas this evening is going to expand into eastern Oklahoma here right before midnight. We see a pretty robust warm sector, a dangerous squall line of storms, and maybe a few locally rotating storms out ahead of it. As this moves on to the north and east, we see it deepening down to about 980 millibars across the Ozarks region. And the NAM model changes this rain over quickly to snow as the atmosphere cools aloft here tomorrow morning. And we can see heavy snow gets going over west central and north central parts of Illinois later tomorrow morning, and then right through the Chicagoland area into southern Michigan. But this is the NAM model. The other models are a little farther south and east and bring the heavy snow close to Chicago. We still have a lot of uncertainty in Chicago. Here is the warm sector tomorrow afternoon over eastern Tennessee and Kentucky and southern Ohio. This could produce a squall line of locally strong to intense wind and maybe a few isolated tornadoes within this line of storms as it spreads eastward. The NAM is not as robust with the chance for tornadoes down in here, but if you click on Anderson, South Carolina, you will see there's definitely some wind shear, a good southerly wind at the surface and a strong west-southwest wind aloft. So there is a potential for tornadoes in this area, but it's more conditional than what we're seeing today. So definitely an intense line of storms. You'll see the radar from the HRRR. We see our low pressure center here later this afternoon. Storms blossoming quickly here across north central Texas. Threat for damaging winds and very large hail along the Red River. As we get into the evening, everything moves through Dallas around 7 o'clock. and expands all the way up to about Little Rock. Now we have to watch this area for intense tornadoes as we get into this evening, and spreading eastward over the Arklatex and into northern Louisiana, northwest Mississippi, and especially eastern Arkansas here around 4 or 5 in the morning. A lot of folks in Arkansas will be under the gun with potential strong tornadoes overnight. So be sure you are ready for that tornado watch and for the watches and warnings that come out. We could see a little snow mixing in Oklahoma and Kansas and into northern Missouri here, but not much before daybreak. Then things start ramping up northwest of St. Louis and Columbia tomorrow morning, and we could on the backside see a heavy thumping of snow, wet snow, by midday across central Missouri and then around the Chicagoland area in the afternoon and into the evening. Most areas are only going to see about 6 or 8 hours of snow, but it could fall over an inch per hour. So 6 to 8 inches minimum of potential snow coming from this. You can see our supercell composite shows some supercell threat this afternoon, but more likely tonight over the Arklatex and East Texas, and then spreading into Arkansas and Mississippi and then Memphis, and then things do move out after that. Here is the potential where we could see rotating storms, and it is growing pretty quickly over north central Texas this afternoon and especially into the evening, and a lot of helicity, a lot of rotating storm cells all the way across East Texas, Southeast Oklahoma, and Western Arkansas, and then that'll expand into Louisiana as we get later on into the nighttime hours. You can see, even though there's not a whole lot of helicity in here, there will be a squall line crossing through the area and producing locally embedded tornadic supercell tornadic circulations, not supercells. Sorry about that. The significant tornado parameter is super high this morning in North Texas. That doesn't mean necessarily we're going to see significant tornadoes, but there's a lot of wind shear here. There just isn't yet enough instability. But as we get later into the afternoon and especially tonight, we see these numbers getting extremely high. I was going to show you the 6Z here. Forget these numbers down here. We're capped across South Texas, but I'm more concerned about what's going on here in North Texas, East Texas, and then into Louisiana. We see a huge area of a high amount, up to 12 of a significant tornado. That is due to extreme wind shear, 150 knot jet streak moving through, wind direction changing from south-southeast at the surface to west-southwest. That's a 90-degree shift. That is certainly going to be very concerning. And it's not out of the question, if this does evolve the way it does, that we still see a high risk or a PDS tornado watch tonight. Right now, I think that might be the extreme, kind of the high end of things, but certainly something I'm going to be watching. And then as we spread eastward tomorrow, and let me get you the southeast. As we head on into tomorrow, we see Arkansas and Mississippi are under the gun. Then things do weaken some by the time we get to 6 or 7 o'clock. There's a lower amount of wind shear, especially directional wind shear in the morning. However, there is still some wind shear. And if you're in Alabama up to Middle Tennessee and even Southern Illinois, just be prepared tomorrow morning for rough weather. It picks up again, Owensboro to Louisville in the early afternoon. Maybe we could see some tornadoes somewhere here in the middle of Kentucky and Tennessee. And then we start to see things ramping up as well across western Georgia and far eastern Alabama. And the area I'm most concerned with is going to be in here in the afternoon, and then in the evening down across central and eastern Georgia and spreading into upstate South Carolina. We could have evening tornado warnings in upstate South Carolina, maybe all the way back to Lake Hartwell and Athens, and then expanding close to Charlotte before things start to fade. We get to right about Charlotte and Lexington, North Carolina, then things start to fade pretty quickly in the evening hours. There will be a boundary in here that is going to stabilize the atmosphere some, and then we lose daytime heating. And so the threat for tornadoes does lower quite a bit at that point. Here's what the NAM radar looks like today and tonight. And then as we go into tomorrow, we still have this line that we have to watch in Ohio, Kentucky, and Tennessee. But tomorrow we see just kind of scattered showers and storms. Some of them could be intense, moving all the way through central Maryland later in the evening and into the Philly area. We could see a thunderstorm in Philly around midnight tomorrow night. Heavy rain in New Jersey and New York City. As we spread to the northeast, you can see where the heavy snow is going to set up in here. It starts breaking out across central PA, but really northern PA doesn't get a whole lot of snow. We go quickly over to sleet and freezing rain. The heavy snow looks like it sets up across central and eastern New York and across interior New England. Boston will get a few inches, but a lot of this could change to sleet or even rain in Boston by Saturday morning. So really this is an interior northeast storm, and we see mixing quite high up to the north. So I don't think we're going to see a major snow in the Poconos. I think it's farther north of you in the Poconos. Heading back to the Great Lakes here, You can see that this will be a heavy snowfall. Now it looks like Chicago is likely in the center of this heaviest band of snow on the NAM, but even on some of the other models. Detroit is close, but I think the thumb gets it more likely. And then across Ontario, we're looking at significant amounts of snow. Here's the GFS. We see our total snow, and really Chicago's kind of on the northern edge of it, all the way back to west of St. Louis into the Ozarks, but southern Michigan, northwest Indiana, and the far northwest corner of Ohio look primed to see that heaviest snow. In the east on the GFS, we see potentially 10 to 20 inches of snow over central New York into interior parts of New England. The GFS really hits Boston hard with a foot of snow. It is kind of an outlier. The other models do not show that. I'll show you that in just a little bit here. The Euro really has heavy snow around lower Lake Michigan into about Kalamazoo here, and Chicago as well for that matter. Even Peoria shows over 10 inches of snow could fall. Looking over to the northeast, good. Oh, the Euro jumped on me here. Sorry about that. We do see some snow today across New Brunswick and Maine, but really the main event is tomorrow. We could get a couple of inches in central PA and into the Poconos before a changeover here Friday evening, it looks like. But the heavier snows are around Toronto, Watertown, north of Albany, northwest of Boston, and we're looking mainly at central and southern New Hampshire and western Vermont, seeing the heaviest snow, maybe up to Portland, Maine as well. But this is quite a bit different looking than the GFS. Come on, baby. Yeah, see, the GFS is like 80 miles south of where the Euro has the heaviest snow. So definitely still some possibility of some adjustments in the forecast. The NAM still wants to hit Kansas City and Pittsburgh, Kansas hard with heavy snow. The other models don't have that. They're farther east, but they hit Chicago hard. They also hit Milwaukee with a foot of snow on the NAM model. I think this ends up being adjusted farther to the south and east, though. And if we look at the northeast, we can see that heavy snow over northern New York State and central and northern parts of New England, and hardly anything over the Delaware Valley here. So definitely a shift. We do have some sleet as well. Could see about an inch of that in the Poconos and Catskills and north central PA, and even into the Connecticut River Valley and into northwestern parts of Rhode Island. We do see on the GFS ensemble a higher amount of snow now showing up in Chicago, 7 inches on average. Still several ensemble members don't have much at all, but several do, and a huge spread here in Chicago. So the Weather Service does have a winter storm watch out, but travel impacts, strong winds, and power outages possible in the Chicagoland area. We had tornadoes here on Monday. Now we're looking at snow on Friday, a potential for 6 inches from about Ottawa and Pontiac on north and east, and I think maybe a potential for a foot over southern Cook County, Kankakee, and northwest Indiana. Lake County, Indiana, Porter County, and Indiana could see quite a bit of snow out of this, but there are some huge adjustments that are still probably going to be made. A lot of uncertainty, and we could have primarily rain here that cuts numbers down quite a bit, moves everything north and west, or we could have the rain farther south and the heaviest snow is right over or just south and east of Chicago. So stay tuned when it comes to that. I mean, the HRRR's just got some incredibly high amounts of snow coming very quickly here south and east of Chicago, with up to a foot over southeastern Cook County. So you have to get over towards Schererville to see about a foot of snow. 18 inches near South Bend, 12 inches north and west of Fort Wayne. So really the northwestern part of Indiana could get the highest amount of snow here in the Great Lakes. We'll look at rain real quick. The blend of models is very wet today, tonight, into tomorrow, with 2 to 3 inches likely up the Ohio River here. Even an inch or two across the mid-Atlantic seems possible. It's got some slightly lower amounts here as things dance around eastern Virginia, the Tidewater region. And then winds will be quite intense as we get into tomorrow. Down south, we're looking at wind gusts in the morning of 40 to 50 miles per hour, ramping up to 60 to 70 miles per hour along the Smokies. Tennessee could have widespread power outages. Kentucky could, and into West Virginia and western PA and western North Carolina. We see intense wind. And then even Friday night on the backside of our storm, a lot of wind coming up the New England coast and a lot of wind in the central Appalachians and around the Great Lakes. So power outages will be possible even around the Chicagoland area, central Indiana, Illinois, and southern parts of Michigan. Wow. I need to catch my breath. If you have any questions, please leave those for me. I would love it if you could subscribe to my channel if you're new to this channel. We had a lot of people come by yesterday, a lot of new subscriptions, and I promised I would give you detailed content. I'm going to do the same. There'll be updates throughout the day on the community page. And if there's some major weather, I may even pop up on YouTube this evening and do a quick video. We'll have to see how things play out. But I really appreciate y'all's time. I thank you for following these watches and warnings and being safe. You know, there are a lot of hardworking meteorologists that go out there. Wow, what's going on here? A lot of hardworking meteorologists that put a lot of effort into getting these forecasts down. And I spend a lot of time talking with other meteorologists. I can't do it alone. And I can't do it without God, who has blessed me in many ways. I've submitted a lot of prayers to God, and he's really coming through to me. And I really hope that he does for you as well. John 15:7 states, if you remain in me and my words remain in you, you will ask whatever you desire and it will be done for you. That's asking a lot of God, but if you don't ask God, you're not going to get what you desire. If you do ask God and you ask others to pray for you, you will start to see some results. Maybe not on the timing that you'd like, but God can come through for you. I know I talked with during my day job, I sell weather technology, and I talked to my boss and he's like, man, I'm praying for you. And yesterday was a big day for me. Just a lot of work that I'd put in, finally starting to see some fruits coming through, some harvesting of all the seeds I've been planted. But you know, it's not about me, it's about God. And I just want you all to understand that. That's why I do what I do every day. I'm not here to toot my own horn. I'm not here to serve myself. I'm here to serve God and to serve you all. And I ask if you have any prayers, to please submit those. I'm happy to pray for you. My thoughts and prayers are with everybody in the South and in the eastern part of the U.S. that'll be impacted by severe weather. I hope you all are safe and that you take this very seriously. I also pray to God that the models and all the, I don't want to say hype, but all the talk about the severe weather ends up being worse than what actually happens. I want to bust on the high side here. I don't want to bust low. So God, please, I ask that you be with everybody in the path of the storm and provide safety and comfort and encourage others. Thank you all for your time today. We'll talk again in the morning. God bless you.